Roger Zahab. Thank you for being here tonight.
Thanks for having me.
What first inspired you? Where did you get your roots with music and with the violin in particular?
Well, I always, as a kid, I always heard music, not exactly as a soundtrack, but it seemed to surround me. And I was always singing and hitting things. Percussion was my first instrument, kitchen pots and pans, and then I got some bongo drums, and was always listening to music and asking to hear records played, very specific records, even before I could read. I think it must have been the beginning of 4th grade, a letter was sent to parents, and orchestral instruments were available, and I took it to my mom, and she said, well, your grandfather liked the violin. And I said, well, I like the idea of playing the violin. It's much easier to carry than cellos or brass instruments. I think that I had no idea what I was getting into. It was only when I was in middle school and high school when I realized how important it really was. So.
And throughout your career, you've worked with some incredible names in the music industry. What were some of the most notable?
To me, I think that when you're playing music and you hear something that grabs your attention, that is notable. You don't. I never worried whether they were famous or not. I only worried whether I could collaborate with them. And whether they were interested in the skills that I had to offer. And I think that every person I've collaborated with pointed out to me that there were more skills to be learned. But certainly the most remarkable experience was working with someone like John Cage. He sent me the first 6 of a set of etudes called the Freeman Etudes. And we wrote a little note and said, please call me if you have any questions. So I opened the music, my jaw dropped, and I called him immediately because I couldn't understand anything that was on the page, and he gave me a quick overview of how to approach it. I started practicing, and then I went into the city and played for him, and it was an ear-opening experience and a mind-opening experience too. Musicians tend to feel very strongly one way or another about him, and I think it's because for most musicians, music has a very strong there is sentiment and there is memory, and there is also a great deal of emotion involved in music, and it is taught as a long line of creative, usually men, writing music to express themselves. And Cage was one of the very first composers to say, I'm not interested in expressing myself. I'm interested in hearing sounds separate from what I feel about them. And so that leads you into quite a corridor of complicated passageways, thought-wise.
The thing I'll say about Cage, and I am by no means a music scholar, I'm certainly a music appreciator, but he consistently challenges my understanding of music. And I like to think that he would appreciate that.
Oh, yes.
I think he would. That's what I can give. And when I get to the works of John Cage, what strikes me more so than the content is the philosophy of it. It makes me think, well, gee, it challenges my understanding of what music is, what a composition is, and actually causes me to listen to more around me than what's present in his recording.
Well, I think that, for instance, he thought of music as something that people did live. He actually did not like recordings, and he had no use for them. So he didn't collect recordings. He okayed. I mean, you could say that there's a contradiction there because he approved recordings. He made recordings because he was asked to, but he himself didn't use them. He would rather just listen to the sounds
Right,
that
same.
were happening.
So, for example, I mean, let's point out probably the most notable 4
minutes and 33 seconds.
4 minutes and 33 seconds, which is 4 minutes and 33 seconds of, would it be appropriate to say, silence? Not really, because that 4 minutes and 33 seconds is composed of the sound that happens.
Yeah,
And
so
that is the piece. That is the music, in a sense.
right, and there's another layer in the idea of 4 minutes and 33 seconds, because it is a composition that is copyright. He conceived of the idea, and he wrote it originally in a graphics score in which time equals space. The essence of John Cage is partly the discipline of paying attention.
But so out of the spotlight, when just one-on-one, when he was really, as you might describe himself, what was it like having a conversation with him?
Well, he was very fun and very sweet person, and also he did have this gift of being able to listen.
So, tell me about your experience here in the Pitt Music Department.
It's the quality of living with other interesting people that keeps me in Pittsburgh. I think it's a great city, and the University of Pittsburgh is a wonderful collection of interesting people, and the music department has become a very comfortable home for me. This is my 20th year. I spoke with Don Franklin, who was the chair at that time, and he admitted that that maybe the orchestra was not going to make it through the year, but it was too late. The semester had begun, and a few students had signed up for it, and they needed to have someone. So if I would be willing to deal with it, they would have me.
To deal with it.
To deal with the orchestra. Jeez. And at that point, it had been turned into a community orchestra, and I slowly moved it back into being a real university ensemble. And we do now 6 concerts a year, and we play Mahler symphonies.
So you have saved this orchestra single-handedly, almost.
Maybe I've saved them, and they've saved me a few times.
Do you find that Pitt has become a destination for music?
It has. The Music on the Edge series presents internationally known performers and ensembles of new music of all kinds in Belfield Hall. We also collaborate with the Warhol Museum and present some concerts there.
Great.
And then we have a great gamelan ensemble and a Carpathian ensemble.
Now, when do you get to perform?
I'm performing in a week with my group Entelechron. I'm going to play with Donna Amato, the pianist, and Paula Tuttle, the cellist, on the faculty. We're going to do the Beethoven Triple Concerto in January, I think end of January in Sewickley, and beginning of February at our concert series in Belfield Hall.
Excellent. Now tell me about Entelechron. Is it a solid group, or are there guest artists that are coming and going through it?
It's a solid group, and we are very flexible. We have collaborators and consultants join us for various concerts. The core ensemble is David Russell, the cellist, Rob Frankenberry, the pianist and tenor, and myself on violin and viola. And Eric Moe has joined us as pianist, and we play music. We play music of friends and people we'd like to have as friends. We have one recording out called Entelechron Time Plus Memory. It's available on iTunes, CD Baby, Amazon, Spotify.
It's out there.
It's out there. Well, there was a famous violinist who was blinded by his E string breaking in a concert. It broke and put out his left eye. It actually happened in the late 1800s,
Wow.
I think.
Now, is there a risk of that happening today, or was that sort of
I always,
old school violin?
I'm very comfortable wearing glasses for that reason.
Ever been to Bacon Night there?
Yes.
Tuesdays are Bacon Night.
Yes, they certainly are, and I've been there many times.
So we can see you with a.
You can find me at
beer and
Harris
a basket
Grill.
of bacon at Harris Grill. I'm going to look for you.
So everyone was from a different walk of life. There were some community people, there were faculty, great molecular biologist, bacteriologist who was in there. There were some undergraduates. Yes, the head of the Bacteriophage Institute, Roger
I bet
Hendricks.
you everybody sat 2 chairs away from that.
No,
guy.
he's wonderful. It was supposed to have only 3 notes in it, but everyone had a different idea of what those 3 notes
You know, that's a
were.
very polite description.
It's a Cajun description. I remember that the first downbeat was the most amazing sound. I actually said, I don't know where to begin. Because
it was that good or that loud?
it was, well, I couldn't call it lousy, but it was just really interesting.
Isn't this kind of what happened in Mr. Holland's Opus? Or am I?
Yeah, well, I think that this is a little more complicated than Mr. Holland's Opus.
Sister Act was like this too.
Maybe more like Sister Act.
There you
yes.
go. She came in,
She came in.
scrubbed him up, and they played for the Pope.